The Nuggets make a pretty massive trade. Will Barton is gone. Mr. Nugget is gone. KCP and Ish are here. Locked on Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us, making us part of your day and your first listen every single day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where you can join the show and join in on the comments because, boy, it is bumping already. The comments are
it's going to be a good one
for this episode on a Wednesday as the Denver Nuggets make a massive trade. We will break it down for you in detail. First, I want to let you know that today's show is brought to you by Arcade 1Up. Locked On Nuggets is partnering with Arcade 1Up to give away 3 free NBA JAM Shaq machines. That's right, 3. These guys are the guys known for making those incredible retro 3/4 scale at home arcade games like Pac-Man, Golden Tee, and more. Enter to win at arcade1up.com/lockedon. That's arcade, the number 1 up.com. Locked On for your chance to win one of the consoles. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. He's Adam Mares. You can find him on Twitter at Adam_Mares. The Denver Nuggets on Wednesday morning are, it is not done, but it is almost done and it's going to happen. The Denver Nuggets are trading Will Barton and Mr. Nugget himself, Monte Morris, to the Washington Wizards in exchange for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Ish Smith. We will get into the number of ways I am cracking up at Ish Smith being involved in this deal later. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was the name that started burbling. Honestly, I started hearing like April was when I first started hearing that name pop up. Like before the playoff series was done, was like KCP may be a guy that they go after.
Well,
that started getting a lot of steam.
That I know actually from talking to the front office that it was even before that it was the trade deadline when allegedly, I think a lesser costly deal was on the table for Tim Conley and the Nuggets for KCP, and it ended up falling apart, like a more of a Barton KCP swap. So I think that this deal actually had maybe more legs at the trade deadline last year. So either way, it's something that has been in the works for quite a long time.
So this was always kind of the most likely deal. Yesterday, after we got off the show, I was texting with someone and asked like, hey, is there like anybody else besides KCP that is like a serious target? And they were basically like, not really. Like KCP is probably the guy. And so I wasn't necessarily surprised to wake up this morning and find this news. I think there are a bunch of questions we're going to have to get to today in terms of the second segment's when we're going to talk about the money aspect and why Adam and I don't think that this is being construed the right way nationally. It's been a little bit confusing to both Adam and I, but let's address the basketball fit because honestly, that's what's most important. Beyond all the money and everything else, this is what's most important. Adam Mares, does KCP check the boxes for you for what you want to see the Nuggets add at the 2-guard position if they were going to lose Will Barton?
He does. I mean, he's got length, he's got defense, he's got a 3-point shot. He's a low usage player in terms of what he wants to do on the court. Like he doesn't want to dribble the ball around a whole lot and do a bunch of different things. So to me, he does check the boxes. Is he like an elite shutdown guy? I think he's very good. He's had those moments. He's a little bit on the older end. But I think it fits Denver's, like sort of what their timeline was. You looked at Monte Morris, he had 2 years left. You look at Will Barton, he had 1 year left. So if you're trading a guy that's only going to give you even just a year of value, I still think it makes sense for what Denver's doing. They have their best, in my opinion, I put this on Twitter, they will have their best 5-man lineup of the Jokic era. I really believe that. And I loved Will Barton and what he brought to the team, but I think KCP brings a level of defense that'll just elevate that a little bit. So while maintaining the effective offense that I think Denver needed from Will Barton. So to me, it absolutely works. And I actually look at this, Matt, I know you probably do too. I think this is a Monte for KCP trade. A lot of people are saying like Monte thrown into the deal. I think this is a Monte for KCP deal, a Will Barton for Ish Smith deal. Like that's kind of how you could look at the pieces here. I had heard, and I even talked about this on my various shows, that the Nuggets, the KCP for Barton deal was not going to happen. It was going to cost more than that. And so I'm not at all surprised at the way that this one worked out.
I mean, you look at it, and obviously the connection between Wes Unseld Jr. and Monte, like that makes a lot of sense. Here's a good way to look at this. I was reading Jake Fisher this morning before this trade came in, and Jake Fisher reported this morning that the Wizards, and I'd heard some rumblings about this, that the Wizards were looking for basically a point guard to pair with Bradley Beal, that they wanted an on-ball point guard so that Beal doesn't have to play point guard all the time. I thought about that, and my immediate thought was Monte.
Right.
Like, and I'll say this, like, if the Wizards are valuing Monte Morris as a starter, then you need to look at this as if the Nuggets actually got good return, because the Nuggets do not view Monte Morris as a starter. He's their backup point guard. He started this season because Jamal Murray was hurt. Like, I love Monte Morris. I have nothing but positive things to say about Monte Morris. I think Monte can be a starting point guard on a 500 or below.
I think he's a top 30 point guard. So by definition, that means he's a starter, but he's probably in the 20 to 30 range, maybe even 25 to 30 range as a point guard.
Yeah. So, they trade a backup point guard, and, we'll get into the value of this, but to me, a lot of this comes into, we had heard, I had talked about on the show that Bones Hyland was considered to be like on the board as a possible sweetener for trades. And so if you're a Nuggets fan, I will tell you that you don't get to just have like sweetheart deals. You just don't. Right. And so you need to consider this as if, would you rather have Monte Morris or Bones Hyland? That was going to be the choice. I don't expect Bones Hyland to be moved at this point. I expect him to stay. He takes over as a primary backup point guard. And you mentioned, I think your point about this being the best 5-man lineup of the Jokic era is on point. The best way to look at this as far as like what they upgraded at 2 guard is pretty simple, right? They could afford to lose Monte as a backup point guard because they have Bones.
Right.
And then if you look at the 2 guard upgrade, Will Barton is 31, shoots 36% from 3, and is a minus defender.
And I think the minus defender part is the biggest thing, because I know a lot of people are like, that chucker, get him out of there. Look, Will Barton takes a few shots I don't like. There's no question about it. He dribbles a little bit more than I like. To me, you live with that. The problem was when you got into this Warrior series, more often than not, he was the mark. And you're already going to be bringing back MPJ, who's going to be a mark. You already have Jokic to sort of cover for in pick and rolls. If Will Barton is a negative defender this year and kind of trending down, like, you just can't win with that. KCP is not a mark. People are not going to be looking to ISO Kentavious Caldwell-Pope as their strategy. So to me, it's actually pretty simple.
Here's where this gets complicated. If you ask me who's the better player between KCP and Monte Morris, I have to think about it for a while. I probably lean a little bit towards KCP, but it might be Monte. So if you look at it from that perspective, then you can say, like, the Nuggets gave up the best player in the deal. Okay. But if you look at it from what the Nuggets have and what they need, the Nuggets need a starting 2 guard. They don't need a backup point guard as much because they have Bones Hyland. So they turned an asset that they didn't need as much into an asset that they needed.
By the way, they got a point guard there. I know it's Ish Smith. We'll see what they do, but it does give them an opportunity. What's wrong here?
Oh, I'm so excited. Okay, so you really don't remember this. For months and months, from basically October 17th through December, through the trade deadline, I continually said, if you just were to take out Facu Campazzo and add Ish Smith, the bench unit would be much, much, much better. So I'm very amused that they got Ish Smith, just because that's the guy that I always point to. And honestly, it's not just with the Nuggets. I do that with a lot of benches where I'm just like, you just need an Ish Smith type, which, like, Ish Smith's not great. He's not, but he shoots well.
He creates a game plan adjustment. Like, you have to be like, okay, he's quick. We got to keep him out of the paint.
He's quick. He's what I call a firebug guard. He's quick. He scores a lot. He's bad at defense. I'm not like, this is why I'm not sure if he's going to be the penciled in like backup guard. I'm not sure yet. We'll see. Yeah, he's third.
He might be third.
You're basically transitioning from Facu Campazzo to Ish Smith.
Could be.
Like, that's the transition that's happening. And to me, that is enough of an upgrade just to stabilize the bench unit a little bit. Like, Ish is not a major part of this deal. He's a throw-in. But this is the way I think of it, is like, the Nuggets needed to move Barton. The Wizards didn't want him. The Wizards wanted Monte. The Nuggets needed something else back. So it's Monte Morris for KCP.
Oh no, Matt. How does your internet keep doing this, dude? It is that deal. The other part of this, though, they do end up getting a new trade exception out of this, a $9.1 million trade exception. So if you look at the second unit, I don't know if Ish Smith, like if you pencil him in as, again, that backup point guard, I would feel a little uncomfortable with that. Maybe he's only on a $4.5 million deal. Maybe he's moved again, like at the trade deadline or something. I think he's a good regular season player. If you look at the playoffs, you want Bones to play. He's a minus on defense. So you're going to have to get defensive players alongside him. But this is where it's so interesting is
you do it.
But Denver will have the flexibility to be able to make some of those moves later on. So Ish Smith, I don't know. Like Ish Smith to me is a good player. He'll be interesting here. I don't think he's great, and I don't feel good going into a playoffs. But Denver does have more moves they are capable of making. Not saying they will make them. They have more moves that are capable of making that shore up some of that there. So we'll see. We'll see how the Ish Smith part of this goes. But the KCP part of it is a no-brainer. And by the way, one other thing here. I could say it with relative confidence that Monte Morris, like Gary Harris before him, was ready to move on. And I don't mean that he was asking for a trade, but I know some people, I've just seen the take of like, how could they do this to Monte? He's been so loyal, this or that. Like Monte was a starter this year and played well. He's up for contract in 2 years. Like this is Monte's, as a player, you look at this and go, now I go back down to being a backup. If I stay in Denver, if I go to Washington, I get to go up into a new spot to kind of show off again and maybe get a new contract in a year's time. So I think Monte looked at this as a good opportunity also for him. So this is not that Denver really wanted to or anybody was asking for it, but I don't think this is like anybody's feelings are hurt.
I want to address this real quick. Brian says the dude that wrote the story for Yahoo Sports isn't convinced Ish Smith is going to be on the Nuggets roster at the start of the year. I asked about this. I would say that the answer is probably he's going to be on the roster. Right. So if they get an upgrade offer, then Ish might get sliced to make room for somebody else coming on. But as of right now, I have not heard that the plan is like, yeah, he's definitely gone.
Well, so the deal, I believe, can't be done until the 6th.
Yeah.
So I think that this is one of those deals that maybe he does end up going somewhere else because a new deal emerges that requires him to be here. Like there's some flexibility on that end. So we'll wait and see. But
Josh asked, should we be pissed that we didn't get a pick back from Washington? Let's talk about the value of this trade and what it means for Denver and why the deal was done and the misconceptions I think that are happening around the league. I'm pretty confused by them.
Well, one of them, can you just say this real quick? Everybody has been screaming at us that Will Barton is the worst starter in the NBA, is the worst player, and now he's traded, and it's why didn't you get more for him?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand it's so funny. Every fan base, by the way, overrates, and this is fine. It's a natural thing to overrate your own players. But but Barton is especially hilarious to me because everyone has been screaming at us for so long about what a terrible player is. And now you basically move him and Monte for a player that's going to start and be good for you. And it's like, why didn't you get a pick out of it too?
The comments are coming in. We're going to try and convince you guys otherwise after the break. But first, Adam's got to tell you about effortless rehab.
That's right. The Nuggets probably could use a little effortless rehab. It's no coincidence for 23 years, the Utah Jazz players had half the numbers of injuries as other teams. Hall of Famers John Stockton, Karl Malone remain two of the least injured players over the last 40 years. Why was that? Well, it's probably because they had one of the best in the business in terms of athletic trainers, rehabilitation, and a program called AMIT. There's about 20 muscles that support each joint. If you have current pain or have been injured, 30% or more of the muscles in that area are likely to be shut off. Inhibited is the technical term. I know this from personal experience. When I tore my quadricep tendon and started to rehab it, even when I started rehabbing it, it felt like certain parts of the muscle just weren't firing, weren't turning on. I tried the regular physical therapy, tried a lot of that stuff. So what did I do? I went to Dr. Robert Weisfeld. Actually, he reached out to me. He's a longtime listener of Locked On Nuggets, a diehard Denver Nuggets fan, and he practices AMIT with his effortless rehab program right here in Denver, Colorado. What he does is a series of, I would say, unique procedures where he's testing different muscle groups in your body, seeing which ones are activated, which ones are not, kind of twisting your body in different ways, telling you to push here, kind of testing the strength in each one. And he could pinpoint which parts of your muscle groups have been turned off and then do certain stretches and different types of things that help turn those muscles back on. I tried it. As I mentioned before, I've had that quadricep muscle tear that has been weak for the last like 4 or 5 years. Spent about 2 hours with him and saw really immediate results. No kidding. Being able to walk down stairs on one leg, putting one-legged squats and using the muscles, something I hadn't done for 5 or 6 years, was able to do after walking out of there. So if you're curious about this, I want you guys to know that there's a great deal for Locked On listeners. Special try it out price, just $35 for one area. You can go to effortlessrehab.com/appointments to make an appointment, or you can call this number 303-300-3933. That's 303-300-3933. Talk to Dr. Robert Weisfeld. Again, Locked On Nuggets listener, Denver Nuggets diehard fan. He'll get you all sorted out.
We're also brought to you today by Sakara. Now is the time to seek wellness, joy, and abundance in all areas of your life, starting with what you eat. With Sakara, you get nutrient-dense meals, snacks, body without ever sacrificing taste or quality. Sakara is a wellness company anchored in food as medicine on a mission to nourish your body through the power of plants. They give you the tools that you need to transform your life with their organic, ready-to-eat meal delivery program and functional health essentials. Their nutritionally designed, chef-crafted breakfasts, lunches, and dinners are made with powerful plant-rich ingredients, helping boost your energy, support your digestion, curb your sugar cravings, and get that skin glowing. Plus, it's all delivered right to your door, ready to eat. And right now, Sakara is offering our listeners 20% off their first order when they go to sakara.com/lockedon20 or enter code LOCKEDON20 at checkout. That's Sakara, SAKARA.com/LockedOn20 to get 20% off your first order. Sakara.com/LockedOn20. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. If you guys want to join the show and support the show, subscribe to us on YouTube. You can join in on the comment section. But boy, it is bumping. There are hundreds of people in the chat right now, and we're all talking about it. It's really crazy. I appreciate you guys being with us. Glad to see the excitement over talking about this trade. So, all right, let's just go ahead and start here. The question that's kind of been, I'm a little confused about how this is being portrayed. First off, I want to set some aside. TJ McBride, who you can follow on Twitter at TJ McBride NBA. TJ first was talking about how, like, based off of his cap sheet, he's like, oh, they have the full MLE now. And then he actually got corrected by someone with information on the matter close to the Nuggets, let's say. Right. And he corrected that, because of Vlatko Čančar's qualifying offer, they're actually over. So they have the taxpayer MLE to work with. And his understanding is that they're planning on using the taxpayer MLE. So first off,
hold up. There's one reason for this. There's one reason for that. Also, if you were to maneuver out and open up the full MLE, it's very likely that the team would hard cap themselves and eliminate their flexibility. So I'd expect them to use the taxpayer MLE, not the regular MLE, or try to get the regular MLE, which I don't think is a huge difference for Denver specifically.
It is a huge difference.
$3 million, I think.
Yeah, they should actually just renounce Vlatko and be able to use it.
Even if it hard caps him? I don't think that makes sense to me. That's extremely risky. You better be 100% confident that you don't need to make any type of moves at any point.
True. That's a good point. The hard cap is an important matter here. Okay.
So they have at their disposal, again, I reached out as well to the team, so I can say this with fair confidence. 9.1 traded player exception. I believe that was created in this latest deal. So it was, I think, an 8.5 or something like that, or 8.6. Now goes up to 9.1 traded player exception. So they can sign, or they can make a trade and bring back 9.1 million in salary on that trade. Then they have the taxpayer MLE, $6.4 basically $1 million. They have another traded player exception that's kind of a useless one. It's 3.5. That's, I guess there's scenarios where you could use it. And then they have veteran minimum deals as well as trades to be, they could make a trade, including Jeff Green, I think would be the most likely one. So to me, you look at this and say the two most likely ways for them to fill out their roster in free agency would be that 9.1 traded player exception and the taxpayer MLE. You can get good players, by the way, for those two prices.
And so I want to start here, though. This was not a move to duck the tax. Like, they're still going to be in the tax. And they're going to add players, which are probably going to add on a tax.
I just want to make it clear. I also agree with you, but I don't want to say it definitively
Sure.
because I don't want like next week us to be like, oh my God, they didn't do this. But I agree with you that this is what's been represented to me. And I don't think this is like a maneuver to cut salary.
Yeah. And I'll say this, like, based off of this move and what they had to give up, they still should have kept that. They should have just, honestly, they should have just dumped J-Mike without getting the 30th pick back. Because it would open up more flexibility for them to be able to make more moves without having to take on Peyton Watson's 30th pick guaranteed salary.
Yeah, maybe. No.
So, like, I'll say that. Hey, by the way, I want to just real quick as a shout out. I just wanted to say shout out to Zamora, whose mom's surgery went great.
Oh, good.
So glad to hear that from Zamora. Just shout out to Zamora, who's always in the comments.
Always hearing it.
So here, the way I do kind of look at this though, again, is like you cannot look at this deal without considering Bones Hyland. Like like that to me is like the crux of it. I'll tell you this, because this was something that got brought up to me on Twitter this morning. Is like, well, why didn't we just trade Will Barton and a pick for KCP? The 20th through 30th picks were not valuable. And everyone's going to say like, but Philly traded the 23rd for DeAnthony Melton. Okay. Again, I've talked about this. DeAnthony Melton 6'2". Okay. And DeAnthony Melton's a short-term option probably for Philly based off of what they're looking for. And the Nuggets did not need DeAnthony Melton. The rest of 20 through 30, teams were trying to move up, couldn't do it. Teams trying to move back and couldn't do it. I heard from two teams that were within the top 10 picks of the second round, and they were like, we'd rather be here than in the top, than in the bottom 10 of the first. So Will Barton and the picks wasn't going to get it done. I talked about this on the show. Washington was looking at their pick plus KCP to move into the top 10. That was their draft priorities. They wanted high-level talent. They weren't looking to pick up depth. They weren't interested in moving KCP for just a pick. That wasn't what they were looking for. They wanted rotation players. And they did not have any interest in Denver's pick. So the difference here is that you did not send out those guys. You retained the pick. You did get players. And you didn't wind up sending, again, Monte for KCP with Will Barton and Ish Smith as attachments. So when you ask, like, well, why didn't we just trade them a pick? They didn't want it. Like, I'm just telling you, the picks that Denver had did not wind up being, nobody was like, I really want to move up and get this pick to take this guy. The market was not there. Again, I'll ask, like, I don't know. I don't know why adding the second pick was there. And I will say that probably they should have been like, all right, let's just move it for a non-guaranteed second rounder in case we need the flexibility. But I, don't know if the downgrade there was available.
I think, go
ahead.
Well, I think the way to look at trades, like when you're talking about star talent, you know, when you trade it, there is such a thing as, okay, you lost value in this trade. You know, you made a star for lesser star trade and that hurts and you didn't get the right things back. Or maybe you traded a star for two non-stars and it didn't add up, whatever. When you start to talk about players of Will Barton and Monte Morris's caliber, there is such a thing as asset management. You want to be able to get the most out of whatever it is you're trading. But I think that is it value becomes a little bit less important there, other than the asset management part, just in terms of, does it now make your roster better? I think unquestionably Denver has a better starting lineup now than what they had. Monte Morris, while he was very valuable to Denver's second unit, the team clearly thinks that Bones Hyland is the future of that spot for the team, maybe for a while going forward. So to me, I think you can drive yourself crazy saying, did we just, sell a quarter for 2 dimes? You got rid of 2 players for a player that is significantly more valuable to what you are trying to do. And now you have the flexibility. Like, what I'm curious about is Denver now has enough money to go after players that I really like. For example, a Cody Martin. We'll see if they have enough money. One of the problems with a Cody Martin is he's a restricted free agent, and you risk trying to get him, wasting the early part of free agency, and then missing out on him because Charlotte matches. That risk is a little bit more mitigated now by the fact that you don't necessarily need Cody Martin to be your starting 2. He could come in and be a backup 2-3. Caleb Martin, the same thing. Victor Oladipo, another player I'm interested in. Like, if Denver were to pursue him, if you are pursuing him to be like, we need him to be the Barton replacement, you're in trouble if he gets hurt or doesn't work out. If he ends up being maybe more of a luxury piece, you're a little bit better at that. So Bruce Brown, another guy, if Denver ends up with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Bruce Brown next week, if that's on their roster and you lost Monte and Will Barton, it doesn't matter if the trade was equal value. Your final form roster would be significantly upgraded. And that's what I'm looking at for the Nuggets.
I've learned to do this, that you have to wait to you have to see the whole picture.
You have to.
And look, we may get to the end of the picture and be like, all they did was this, and now Christian Brown is like their third like shooting guard or wing, and that's bad, right?
Might be there.
I'll tell you, like, I heard that this makes Victor Oladipo less likely.
Okay.
Like, they're still in pursuit, but this makes Victor Oladipo
He's
less
so
likely.
risky. Like, he'd be so interesting, but there's a lot of risk with him.
So
injury risk and also like especially now roll risk.
And honestly, they're going to make more moves. The most likely trade target is Jeff Green. And so if they trade Jeff Green after trading JaMychal with no backup center and only Zeke Naji, guess what? They're going to have to use assets to replenish the front court.
Right.
But that's going to have to be it. I want to ask you about this. I want to get your thoughts on this because you think about basketball in such I'm not just blowing smoke up your rear because I hate to do that. But you think about basketball in really such a brilliant way. Like, you are one of my favorite people to listen talk about how the game is played. The question, somebody asked in the comments above, what's the priority right now? And there's been this idea. Brendan kind of mentioned this on Twitter, and I was like quote tweeting him, but not meaning to dunk on him. It was a matter of, there's been this idea of like, well, now they're really short on shot creation. And I can give you my view, but I'd really like your thoughts on what the Nuggets need now, because there does seem to be they really need shot creation now, but to get bigs. I have my thoughts, but I'm curious to know what you think the Nuggets' priorities need to be from a team building standpoint going forward in the offseason.
So shot creation, I mean, again, I have to keep reiterating, the Nuggets had the 6th best offense last year without Murray and Porter. Like, the shot creation, they're making shots, and they were towing an anchor of a second unit. Murray, Jokic, I would call that elite level shot making in a starting unit. Even with Gordon, Porter, and KCP as the other guys, I think it's elite shot creation and just elite offense in general. Off the bench, you have Bones Hyland, now Ish Smith, Davon Reed, Zeke Naji, and you Christian Brown, whatever. I don't think there's a lack of playmaking there, especially when I think that second unit is going to feature Michael Porter Jr. a lot, meaning staggered, where Porter is alongside Bones. So I don't know that they need playmaking. Is not high on the list of things that I think this team is going to need or is going to be lacking. Injuries obviously could change that, but as it is, I think Denver's okay in that regard. What they need is defense. Well, they need a backup center. I think, guys, we haven't really talked about a ton of these guys. It's funny. Everyone's going to laugh and roll their eyes. Isaiah Hardenstein, to me, if you could somehow squeeze him into that 9.1 traded player exception, like that to me is like a perfect guy. I love Isaiah Hardenstein. I think he'd be elite. Don't think it's going to happen. But then you have guys like Zach Collins, who I think might be worth a flyer. You can get these types of guys who have defense and maybe are reclamation projects. So backup center. And then I do think you need some length at the 2, 3, maybe even you could say 1, whether that's ahead of Ish Smith or behind him. But Davon Reed and Michael Porter right now are your 3s, and then Peyton Watson after that. To me, that's the area I look at and think, well, we don't know how healthy Michael Porter will be. Do you have another player you could plug into that 3? And that's why a Bruce Brown, a Cody Martin would be so fascinating, because if you were able to add a player that caliber, but which, by the way, Denver is in position where I don't think it's crazy that they could add one of those guys. If you're able to add that type of player, in theory, you have a great second unit now, 1 through 4 at least, then you have the center. But also you have the ability to play KCP and, say, Bruce Brown together alongside Murray, Gordon, Jokic in a playoff series if Michael Porter's getting targeted and not making shots, which is, to me, an extremely important thing. I love Michael Porter. I hope he grows to be a better defender and is healthier this year. But if not, you want the ability to pivot to a more defensive-minded lineup, and a player like Bruce Brown would make Denver about as good as you could hope for given the circumstances.
Let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk more about this deal and what we think it means for them, all the options on the table, all the facets of this deal, as well as I want to reflect a little bit on Monte and Will's time here, because as people that cover the Nuggets, we understand, I think, their impact better than anybody outside of the team. So I want to do that when we come back. But first, I want to tell you about BetOnline, your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. You can get all the latest developments, league reviews, and news, including Major League Baseball, and get you set for NFL season. BetOnline is your continued source for all wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores, and they're the best spot to find podcasts and news. BetOnline.net's the fastest and easiest way to check in all your favorite sports and events like MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets.
Did you mute yourself? You mute yourself. You're muted. You mute yourself again. Did Matt freeze? What is going on here? I'm entering the ads. We'll wait for him to come back. Let's see here.
So I think my USB hub is dying. That's what I think is happening. I think
Really?
I think my USB hub is dying because it basically everything I have is wired into this hub and it keeps dying. And that's why I think I keep having problems as we come back on Locked On Nuggets. That's right. I'm just going to jump right back into this. Thanks for hanging with me, guys. I promise I'll get the tech issues figured out very soon. Restream's driving me crazy. It's only on Restream, by the way.
We've been having Restream over at DNVR. We've been having Restream issues. So it might actually be Restream.
Yeah. All right. Good question from Josh. Is he secretly back in Arkansas? Well done, Josh. Well done. Well done on burning me on the Arkansas internet. All right, so let's come back and let's finish this up. So I think the wrong way to think of this, I think, is that the Nuggets save money. I don't think that that's the target here. I think. Let me ask you this: if KCP, if the deal was a addition of salary of less than, let's say it was going to cost them less than $5 million more, do you think they do this deal?
Yes.
Me too. So like that's what I'm gonna go ahead and do. And the audio is terrible on the Restream side as well, they say, which is weird because Adam once again does not have any sort of issues with the audio. That's interesting. I'll switch to my default. I won't sound as good, but it may not drive you guys insane. Let's try that and see if that helps at all. Let me know in the chat if that's the problem. So Adam, do you agree with me that they did not just do this to send money? Can we talk a little bit about why KCP is such an upgrade on, and then we can talk about some of the other factors involved?
Sorry, just seeing somebody was sending me that Scott Hastings called me a blogger boy on the radio just now. So I'm gonna have to call my buddy Scott Hastings here, see what the fuck he's talking about. What was that again? What was the question?
Why is KCP an upgrade over Will Barton? I'll be right back.
Okay. I mean, he's just an upgrade because obviously the defense. I mean, he's got the length. Will Barton, I think it was really under the radar how much he was falling off defensively for the Nuggets. And also I think it just had expired. Like sometimes players expire. KCP 2 years ago during the bubble run for the Lakers, made a huge defensive impact for them. He's 29. He's actually younger than Will Barton is now. So I think there's reason to believe that he is going to, that he's going to bounce, have a good defensive impact on Denver, be part of their closing lineup. I've talked to Calvin a lot over the last couple of weeks. One of the things he said is, look at the roster, look at what succeeds in the playoffs. You can't have very many defensive liabilities. At the very top, if you get to the finals level, you really can't have any. Maybe you have one if they're elite enough on the offensive end, on the other end. And so I think I look at that and I go, he's going to be on the court for the Nuggets in late in fourth quarters, almost full stop. There may be scenarios where Denver wouldn't need him in certain matchups, but against a good backcourt, full stop, he's going to be on the court. You could look at Will Barton and say, if everybody is healthy, even last year, and you have Austin Rivers on the court, do you close with Austin Rivers over Will Barton? If you got Monte and everybody else out there, probably, because at that level, he becomes a defensive liability. So to me, Denver, it's very likely that Denver in a playoff series is going to close with, like, if you told me the guys I think most likely to close, I would say it's going to be Jokic, Murray, Gordon, KCP, and Michael Porter's the guy that now I look at and I think, like, there might be situations where he does not close for you. I think the team wants him to, and hopefully his defense elevates to that. But I look at it and I go, that, he is likely to close where Barton is likely not to going forward. So that's why he's the upgrade.
Jamal, you could do Jamal, Bones, KCP, Gordon, Jokic. You could do Jamal, KCP, Jeff Green, if necessary, Aaron Gordon, Nikola Jokic. Like, you have a lot more positional flexibility right now. Like, I just think the KCP help being able to flex between 2 and 3 is important, and not having a minus defender. It also means that you can afford to have one minus defender or two, depending on like what scheme you've got with Jokic. Like, you have more availability here because you don't have targets all over the floor, and that's pretty good.
Your audio still cracking up here, man. I can carry us home if you need.
Yeah, let's do that.
And I know what Matt was going to say here in this last segment. I wanted to talk about Will Barton and Monte Morris's impact. I know Matt feels the same way about this as the NBA at large. Over the last 20 years, people have really started to view players. They almost view their connection to basketball through the eyes of a GM, where guys are just like assets and we got to trade and we make the best one. And look, at the end of the day, you're trying to win a championship. So you should look at things that way to a certain extent. I think what can get lost sometimes in the shuffle is it's also fun to root for your guys and to appreciate the little ways in which they can help lead to winning. I think with Monte Morris, this was incredibly easy. He embraced the city in the way very few players do. We saw him at Broncos games, at Avs games, at Rockies games. We saw him like really enjoying being one of the guys in Denver, his teammates. Every teammate loves him. He knew everybody in the city. He's an easy guy to root for. He's a guy that was a 51st pick. He wasn't supposed to make it. He was a longer shot than Kamagate is, right now. So, like, the fact that he spent 1 year in the G League, got better at all the things that finishing at the rim that people said, I don't know if he's going to be able to do that at the NBA level. He got great at that, was a great story. The fact that he then after the G League, he comes into the NBA, makes an immediate impact, solidifies himself as part of this rotation, and really ingrained himself into the fabric of what the Denver Nuggets have been over the last 4 or 5 seasons. It was great. And then, of course, I call him Mr. Nugget. We kind of gave him this nickname because of how much he embodied all of the things about being a fan favorite player and being an important role player and important teammate. Monte was great. I think everybody likes him. Everybody has loved his time here. And he wasn't here long enough in an interesting way. He wasn't here long enough for this downside. Almost all role players, non-stars, go through a boom-bust cycle with the fan base where they'll like him to a certain extent. And then as soon as the team gets a little bit worse, you start thinking, well, what's he still doing here, this or that? Monte, I think everybody is going to miss him and what he represents here. Will Barton is such a more interesting arc in a way that's both exciting and tragic. I mean, it was time for Will Barton to move on. I think knowing what I know, or at least hearing what I've heard about how there were deals for Will Barton maybe last summer and at the trade deadline that could have brought in maybe a Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, you look at that and you think, yeah, I think we all feel that he was here a year too long, probably 1 season too long. And seeing the way his defense dropped off, it's so good to be ahead of the curve than behind it. And maybe Denver was behind it. So I understand a fan's frustration about Will Barton and maybe feeling the sense of, blaming him for some of this different stuff or whatever. I understand the draw to do that. What I will say is, I don't think most people that are watching this show or listening to this show were around in 2014 when Will Barton arrived here. It was a wasteland in Denver. It was very dark days. If you told me what were the highlights of the point in time when Will Barton arrived, the highlight was Brian Shaw had to take everybody's phones away from the locker rooms because they were not listening to his game reports. He ended up trying to wrap the game reports to connect with young players. The Nuggets were spiraling. The 1-2-3 Cancun era was well underway. Here comes Will Barton, who was buried on the bench in Portland, and he shows up in Denver, a team that had long given up on the season, and he played his ass off every single game. He just showed up and was like, I'm here, and he was exciting. It was exciting to see a player that was like, hey, this guy actually cares about winning. You go to the next season, 2015, Michael Malone's the new coach. Nikola Jokic is a face nobody even knows about. Will Barton was like Monte Morris is now, where everybody loved him. He was such an important piece. The entire team gravitated towards his personality, his confidence. At the time, he was a sixth man, and everybody liked that he was willing to take some of these tough shots. And him and Jokic off of the bench, Jokic, you guys understand, Jokic is so great that I really believe he would have worked out in any circumstance. So what I'm about to say, I'm not saying Jokic wouldn't have found a way, But Jokic did find a way in large part with Will Barton. People don't remember this, but Jokic's rookie season, his number one pick and roll partner was Will Barton. I think statistically, they were like the number one or number two pick and roll duo in all of the NBA. This is why Will Barton labeled them Kobe and Shaq. And what was, I thought, a really cool moment. Like, hey, this is us. Some people I see, like the talking radio heads, will be like, he was so arrogant. He thinks he was Kobe. Like, get him out of here. Like, no, guys, what he was saying is he was giving confidence to a team that won 30 games. And he was giving this confidence to a player, even like Jokic, of like, hey, we can beat anybody. And guess what? They did. The best part about 2015 was Jokic's rise, his ascension, but he was doing it in large part alongside Will Barton, who was also ascending as a player. And at that time, in his proper role as the sixth man, I think everybody liked him. In 2016, continued to grow as a player. People loved him. He had big moments. As the seasons went on, 2017-18, Gary Harris had really risen. Jamal Murray was starting to take place. Like, those guys became better players and more prominent players. But everyone is going to forget that in both seasons, Gary Harris and Jamal Murray missed significant portions of time, weeks at a time. Will Barton was there, and Denver did not drop off. Now, Jokic was also there. He's the number one reason that they didn't drop off. But Will Barton went from sixth man to playing even extended minutes and being the second option, second scorer, and Denver survived. They actually thrived. He gets injured, and he gets injured. Unfortunately, he was there for the climb. Right when the payoff arrived, Will Barton gets injured, and his career really hadn't been the same since. Was he a guy that didn't scale his game down coming back from injury? Absolutely. And it was frustrating to watch, and it sucked to watch. Was he a guy that wanted to be a starter, maybe in a lot of vanity? Like, why not come off the bench if it would help? Absolutely. No questions asked, although I think there were times when he probably was best as a starter, and there was times he probably wasn't. But nonetheless, there were things that started to get under the team's fan base's skin. And then famously, he gets booed in the 2018 playoffs. He gets booed. A guy that had played through injury and that had carried the team through other injuries, playing every single night, 20 games in the month of January, he shows up. And by the way, Denver has their best month in a month when Jamal Murray and Gary Harris are hurt. The only reason they were a top seed that year anyway in the playoffs, I think they were the number 3 seed. The only reason is because they had a phenomenal January when so many other guys were injured. And by the way, behind the scenes, Will Barton is always the guy who is hyping everyone else up. He's hyping himself up, but he's the guy that was in Jokic's ear in 2018 saying, nobody can guard you. Why don't you see it? Jokic, shoot more. You're the best player on the court. You're the guy. You don't realize it. He was the first one saying all these things, trying to hype him up. Now, look, it's no lie that as the years went on, it definitely felt like he should have been moved. Some of that vanity, I think, started to get maybe even worse at times. Some of that not being able to scale his game down in certain moments got worse. And then Jamal Murray gets hurt. Then Michael Porter gets hurt. This season, who did you want taking shots? What was the best possible outcome for the Nuggets this season? Did Will Barton take and make some dumb shots at times? No question about it. Did he break the offense? Did his defense completely fall off? No doubt about it. Am I sad to see him go? Not at all. I think it's a year too late. I'm excited for him. But I just hope that the number one 3-point field goals shooter in Nuggets history, the guy who's number one currently on the all-time made threes list, a guy that was a second-round pick, wasn't supposed to make it, and a guy that did all of these things that went unheralded for all these years. I understand wanting him to be gone. I understand not really liking him. But I hope Nuggets fans enjoy the ride. Enjoy all the little pieces that make a ride better. We're not the Lakers. I don't want us to turn into Lakers fans that are just always looking for the next Anthony Davis, the next whatever, and damn all these young players, damn all these role players. We don't need them. We just need Westbrook and AD and Dwight Howard and Carmelo Anthony. Like, no, that's not Denver. Sometimes these little pieces matter a lot. And in my opinion, Will Barton mattered a lot for a majority of the time he was here. He's gone. I know Nuggets fans feel good riddance. But I personally hope that we all kind of remember this time fondly. 5-10 years, we look back, we think of him the way we thought of players like T.R. Dunn or Michael Adams, not the guys of the 80s era, but guys that we enjoy. J.R. Smith is a beloved Denver Nugget from the Carmelo Anthony era. Guess what J.R. Smith was? Will Barton. He was a guy that took terrible shots, that thought he was better than he was. But we all look back at it and are like, man, I love J.R. Smith. I hope that with time goes on, we can appreciate the good things that Barton brought to this era. And now that the Nuggets move on and hopefully win a title, I think we can appreciate that he was part of this "we don't skip steps" era. That's it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We're going to be back tomorrow. I'm not sure what time we'll be back tomorrow because the trade deadline begins at 4:00. I expect there to be more moves for the Nuggets. So we'll be covering those either before or after or both. So